Okay, so not so long ago, I ranked all of the SS Plus weapons in Naruto Shinobi Striker. And whilst these weapons are obviously really cool, there's a lot of other weapons in the game that should be talked about. So that's exactly what we're gonna be doing today. And we will be starting with the attack class, which has over 30 unique weapons you can pick. We will look at every single one, talk about the good and the bad, and decide whether or not it's worth spending your scrolls when it next shows up in the featured lineup. Now, without any further ado, let's get to it. Alright, so something obviously has to take the very bottom spot on this list, and for me, that's the ninja knives. Out of all of the lower rarity attack weapons, these just feel like the least viable overall. The tracking in particular is really rough in my experience, and apart from their air strong attack, none of the combos really give you much to work with or lead into anything meaningful. The light attack stun isn't terrible, I'll give it that, but honestly that's about where the positives end. There's not much combo potential here, and it's hard to consistently apply pressure or keep enemies locked down. So yeah, for me, this is easily the weakest attack weapon in the game and earns the last spot on the list. Next up, we have the ninja knuckles, which are honestly very similar to the ninja knives, but they feel just a bit better overall. The tracking and reliability seem noticeably more solid, and you get access to more combos that either knock the enemy up or bounce them off the ground, which is always a nice thing to have. That said, we're still very much in the lower rarity territory here, so don't expect anything crazy. A lot of these early spots on the list are going to be occupied by basic weapons with fairly small differences between them, but I still think it's worth pointing out which ones I feel are slightly better to use. And for me, the knuckles do edge out the knives. Alright, next up we have the boxing gloves. This weapon feels extremely similar to the ninja knuckles in almost every way. The biggest overlap is definitely the air strong attack, which is basically identical between the two. Because of that, choosing between these weapons really comes down to smaller details. Things like how certain combos feel, minor flow differences, or just the visuals. And personally, I tend to prefer the boxing gloves a bit more in that regard. Other than that though, there's honestly not much else to say here. It's a very familiar moveset just with a slightly different presentation. Next up, we have the twin fangs. This weapon is supposedly modeled after Might Guy's fighting style, although personally I don't really see that connection all that clearly when using it. The biggest issue with the twin fangs is that it just doesn't really excel at anything. None of the combos feel particularly impactful. They don't knock enemies up, they don't bounce them off the ground, they just mostly push them back. That can be valuable in game modes like base battle or flag battle, but outside of that, it's not especially useful. On top of that, the tracking on this weapon feels pretty poor, which makes even starting a combo more difficult than it should be. Overall, it's a very underwhelming weapon in my opinion, especially considering it's an SS rarity. I personally wouldn't say it's worth spending your scrolls on. Okay, up next we have hand-to-hand combat, or as most people would probably just call it, Taijutsu. This weapon, or rather fighting style, feels extremely similar to the ninja knuckles and the gloves again. It is honestly quite hard to differentiate between these three just on the visuals alone. They feel like the exact same weapon. That being said, out of the three, hand-to-hand combat feels the most consistent in terms of tracking and managing to stay on the opponent. Despite the similarity, these two things make the weapon stand out, so I have to rank it a bit higher than the gloves and the knuckles. And I mean, it's straight up Taijutsu, so it gets a few bonus points just for the style alone. Next up, we have the Shisui Spear. This weapon suffers from some of the same issues I mentioned with the twin fangs, in mainly that it doesn't really give you a strong edge in fights like the other weapons do. That said, the tracking on this one is definitely better, which already makes it a bit more usable by comparison. It also has a pretty cool drill style attack, which, while not being revolutionary by any means, is still fun to use and gives the weapon at least some personality. Overall though, unless you're a big Shisui fan or really like the look and feel of this weapon, I still don't think it's worth spending esoteric scrolls on. Next up, we have the scientific ninja tool Fleetfoot, a weapon that has you fighting almost entirely with kicks. In terms of how it feels, this weapon is actually really solid. The light combos, heavy combos, and mixed combos all flow nicely, and some of the stunts you get on certain hits are quite long, which is obviously very useful in combat. The biggest issue, however, is the tracking. And honestly, it is bad. Arguably some of the worst tracking in the entire attack class. You can be standing right next to an enemy who isn't even moving that much and still end up whiffing attacks. Simply because tracking is so important in this game, that alone drags the weapon way down on the list for me. If it weren't for that, this would rank much higher, but as it stands, it's just too unreliable. Up next, we have the scientific ninja tool Violet Soul. This is once again one of those weapons that I don't really have any any major issues with, but it also doesn't do anything particularly outstanding. A lot of the combos on this weapon end up sending the enemy fairly far away, especially anything involving chain combos with strong attacks, which can be useful in most like base or flag battle, but in many situations you'd rather keep the enemy close. On the flip side, the basic late attack combo has a really nice knockup at the end, which gives you a good opportunity to follow up with extra damage. The tracking and overall consistency aren't amazing, but they're also not the worst in the game. So yeah, a solid serviceable weapon, just nothing that really stands out or blows you away. Moving down the list, we have the basic claws. So out of all the lower rarity weapons, the claws easily feel like the most viable option. They have good combos across the board, solid stunts, and with enough practice and skill, you can absolutely make them work in a proper build. That said, they still don't really offer anything that pushes you to the next level compared to higher tier weapons, which is why they end up lower on the list. Reliable and usable, but ultimately limited. Hey, if you're enjoying the video so far, then a like and a subscribe would be super appreciated. We're so close to 3,000 subscribers and getting there would be genuinely awesome. Thanks a lot, and now on to the next entry. Moving down the list, we have the scientific ninja tool Storm Sphere. This weapon lets you incorporate wind style into your combos alongside with some paw print style attacks. I think most people would agree that this isn't one of the more popular SS weapons. You rarely see it unless someone really doesn't have any other options. I wouldn't call it outright bad though. There's some nice variety in the moveset, like the spinning Chakra claw attack and a heavy combo that ends up with a knockup. Still, it doesn't really have anything that would convince you to specifically chase it with your scrolls, unless you really like the moveset itself. Interesting overall, but it feels a little bit underwhelming compared to other weapons of the same rarity. Next up, we have the Raikage gauntlets. They're modeled after the Raikage's fighting style, but honestly, I feel like they could have leaned much harder into it, especially considering how many iconic and aggressive moves he has in the anime. That aside, it's not a bad weapon. The combo variety isn't amazing, and the combos themselves don't create strong opportunities on their own though. Where this weapon really shines though is its stuns. A lot of both light and heavy attacks leave enemies stunned for a long time, which makes it great for combo resets or chaining into high damage jutsu. Overall, an interesting weapon that I wish had a bit more going for it, but definitely not unusable. Up next, we have the scientific ninja tool Burning Suns. The most interesting thing about this weapon is probably the two strong attacks, which are different depending on whether you're on the ground or in the air. And both of them are pretty interesting. The grounded strong attack has a long sequence of punches that ends by launching the enemy upward, which gives you a chance to follow up with more damage. That said, after around 11 hits, the enemy gets hard knocked, so there is a limit on how much you can actually extend the combo. The aerial strong attack, on the other hand, is more like a mini 8 trigram style rotation, which can be useful for creating space in crowded fights. Unfortunately, the weapon does feel a bit slow overall. If you miss the grounded heavy attack, you're locked onto a 3-punch animation, which can be very punishing. When everything connects, it definitely hits hard, but because of its inconsistency, I have it landing a bit lower on the list. Next up, we have the Masked Man Chains, a weapon that lets you fight using kamui, similar to how Obito fought during his battle with Minato. Visually, this weapon is great. The combos look really nice, and using kamui was always going to be cool by default. That said, I don't personally feel like it offers anything especially strong in terms of added value. The main upside is that during certain parts of your combo, kamui activates and makes you briefly interruptible, but the duration is fairly short. The heavy attack this weapon has is interesting, but it has basically no tracking, and overall the weapon's tracking isn't anything special either. So yeah, this is definitely a weapon worth picking up if you're a big Obito or Kamui fan, but otherwise, I don't think it's something you absolutely need in your arsenal. Next, we have the Ashura weapon, which allows you to fight using mechanical arms. This weapon actually has some really nice combos that let you smoothly weave in jutsu or continue attacking for a solid amount of time. It's also fairly fast, which helps it feel good when everything properly works. Unfortunately, it suffers from one of the most frustrating issues a weapon can have: flakiness. Both the initial hit tracking and the weapon's ability to stay connected to the opponent during combos can be inconsistent. Because of that, it's hard to rely on it in real matches, even though the moveset itself is definitely cool. Overall, a fun and interesting weapon, but that inconsistency holds it back and keeps it from ranking any higher for me. Alright, coming up next, we have the scientific ninja tool Carapace, modeled after Kawaki. I know for some people this placement might seem a little bit high, especially considering it's just an S rank weapon. And do I have a perfectly logical explanation for that? Not entirely. For the most part, this weapon simply passes the vibe check you're looking for when using a weapon in this game. The flow feels right, the combos make sense, and everything just feels natural to use. On top of that, it deals really strong damage per hit. In just 7 to 8 hits, you can finish a full normal combo and take away around 50% of an enemy's health bar. star, unless you're fighting a defense type. So yeah, for an S rank weapon, this thing is genuinely very solid, and I definitely recommend giving it a try if you haven't already. Next up on the list we have the Scientific Ninja Tool Shooting Star. To me, this weapon feels very similar to the previous one, the Carapace. It passes the same vibe check and once again genuinely deals really good damage per hit. The main difference here is that it does all of that while also being much more visually interesting. I don't really have much else to add here. The combos are fun, it has a nice first hit stun, and overall it performs well. That said, just like the Carapace, it's not a weapon that will completely make or break your build. Next we have the Scientific Ninja Tool Red Flying Swallow, the first of the Flying Swallow sister weapons. Personally, I do find this one slightly worse than the black version, but it's still a decent weapon overall. Its biggest strength is the aerial strong attack, this kind of spinning move, which makes it easy to catch enemies you currently aren't locked onto. It also has some nice combos that let you bounce opponents off the ground and continue the combo in the air. As for the downside, some of the attacks, especially the grounded strong attack, aren't the easiest to land, and the tracking can be a bit inconsistent at times. Still, it's not terrible by any means. Overall, a solid weapon, but probably not one I'd spend scrolls on still. Continuing down the list, we have the Scientific Ninja Tool Thunder God. This is a very fast weapon with smooth, well-flowing combos that let you quickly blitz your opponent. It doesn't offer anything that will instantly take your gameplay to the next level, but it does have a few nice strengths. First off, the combos look great, which honestly helps make up for the rather questionable weapon design itself. The strong attack is fast and versatile. As a charge attack, it can be used to quickly push enemies away, and within normal combos, it can knock them upward. Another thing I really appreciate is that the combo chains aren't overly long. They're relatively short, but each hit deals solid damage, which makes you less likely to get interrupted mid-combo. So overall, it's a good fast weapon with clean looking combos, but still not something I'd especially go out of my way to spend scrolls on. Next up, we have the Asuma Knuckle Knives, an SS weapon with a moveset based on Asuma's fighting style. Historically, this has been one of the most feared and abused weapons in Shinobi Striker, and while it's definitely not as powerful as it was in its prime, it's still a very reliable weapon. If you put enough time into learning this weapon, you can absolutely get a lot out of it. It has strong combos, solid stunts, and overall just feels really good to use. You probably won't be picking this when building the most optimal meta setup, but if you're looking to have some fun, it might be worth dusting these off and giving them another shot. Up next we have the Scientific Ninja Tool Black Flying Swallow. This weapon is very similar to its counterpart, the Red Flying Swallow, but in my opinion it's simply better. You'll still get the wide strikes and solid combo options, but instead of ending with a long spinning attack, you get a ranged attack at the end. That ranged hit is extremely useful whenever you lose track of your enemy during a combo, since it can still connect even if they move off axis a bit. It doesn't have tracking like a normal jutsu, but it's still very practical. Overall, the weapon offers good combos and solid versatility. I definitely consider picking this up if it shows up in the Tenten exchange shop, especially if you don't have many other options. Though spending scrolls on it is a tougher choice. Next we have the Scientific Ninja Tool Valiant Threats, which is a really strong weapon with a lot of very useful combos that let you control enemy positioning across the map. The standout feature here is the strong attack. Depending on whether you're on the ground or in the air, it either pulls the enemy towards you or stuns them in place. Both versions are incredibly useful. You can pull enemies off of objectives or lock them down and follow up with ninja tools or ninjutsu. On top of that, the weapon has a high skill ceiling, meaning the more time you invest into it, the more value you're going to get out of it. It's not quite as strong as it was before its nerfs, but it's still one of the better SS weapons in my opinion. Next up, we have the Kurama Claw, our first SS Plus weapon on this list, and in fact the very first SS Plus weapon ever released in the game. A lot of you probably remember just how absurdly broken this weapon was at launch. Thankfully, it can no longer stun lock enemies endlessly with its strong attack, and I now describe it as simply a very good weapon rather than an overpowered one. It still has great combos, an excellent strong attack, and it's obviously visually amazing. I mean, who doesn't enjoy fighting in Kurama Link mode? That said, it's no longer at the absolute peak of its power, and I do think there are several weapons in the current meta that outperform it. Next up, we have the Scientific Ninja Tool Sunbeam, which easily has some of the smoothest animation and combo flow in the entire attack class. It's genuinely a really satisfying weapon to watch and use. The standout part of this weapon is the finisher on most of its combos, which ends with a large diagonal projectile slash that can easily clip multiple enemies around you. Overall, this weapon does a great job at dealing damage to surrounding players, which is always a strong advantage in teamfights. It's also very fast and honestly does almost everything well. The only real reason it doesn't rank any higher is simply because the weapons above it bring something extra to the table that makes them feel even more special. Up next, we have the scientific ninja tool Violet Petals, one of the more popular SS weapons in the community. Personally, I do prefer it slightly over the sunbeam, as it feels like it accomplishes a very similar role but just a bit better. By far the strongest part of this weapon is its strong attack. You stun the opponent, disappear, and then blitz them with the sword, creating a large AoE attack that can hit multiple enemies around. Outside of that, the weapon also has some solid combo routes that either knock the enemies into the air or bounce them off the ground, giving you a good follow-up potential. As for downsides, the initial hit of the strong attack has pretty poor range, so it's much more reliable to chain it from light attacks. Luckily, most of the light to strong attack combo strings naturally lead into that AoE finisher. Overall, a very strong weapon and definitely one worth considering spending scrolls on. If Asuma's knuckle knives were one of the most feared weapons, then I think we can all agree that Chakra claws are the most feared weapon in Shinobi Striker's history. Back in their prime, seeing these at the start of a match basically guaranteed you weren't about to have a good time. Even now, despite no longer being able to sub-block people indefinitely with the heavy attack, they still offer some of the cleanest and most effective combos in the game. Meta builds still use them for a reason. The main reason I don't rank them higher is that they aren't a weapon that you can just pick up and instantly dominate with. They definitely have a bit of a learning curve. On top of that, visually they don't really do it for me. That said, they're an extremely strong weapon overall. Next up, we have another SS Plus weapon, the Timber Wood Sword, which lets you use Hashirama Wood style and even enter the stage mode by performing a fully charged Chakra jump. In my opinion, this weapon already has excellent combos in its base form, but once you activate Sage Mode, the damage output and combo potential go to a whole nother level. Entering Sage Mode isn't difficult either, it only takes a few seconds and the transformation lasts for a solid amount of time. Using Sage Mode is always fun, and when it's tied to a weapon that is this strong and visually impressive, it just makes the experience even better. Overall, a really powerful weapon and very enjoyable to use. Next up, we have the Viper Blade Night Fang, a weapon that lets you summon a snake mid-combo to deal damage and apply poison to your opponent. At the moment, this is one of the strongest SS weapons in the game. There are three main things that really make this weapon stand out. First of all, it has a stun built into the middle of its light attack combo, which can actually function as a ranged projectile. It doesn't have tracking, but for an attack type weapon, having that option at all is incredibly useful. Second, many of the heavy attack combos apply poison at the end, and the aerial versions can even poison multiple enemies at once, which is obviously very strong in teamfights. Finally, combo strings that start with 2 or more light attacks and transition into a heavy attack summon a large snake that spins around and damages anyone nearby, acting almost like an AoE jutsu. On top of all of that, the tracking on this weapon is very consistent and rarely loses the target mid-combo. When you put everything together, it's easily one of the best weapons available right now and absolutely worth pulling for when it shows up again. Honestly, it almost feels like this was meant to be an SS Plus weapon. So, if you watched my SS Plus weapon ranking video, you'll know I originally placed the Shinobi Wear Kawaki model fairly low, and I'll be the first to admit I was wrong about that. This weapon deals incredible damage and has a ton of built-in stunts across its combo routes, making it very easy to chunk huge portions of an enemy's health without relying on advanced tech. It might not be the flashiest SS Plus weapon visually, and it doesn't have a super gimmicky mechanic, but in terms of raw effectiveness, it's undeniably strong. Sometimes simple damage and consistency are all you need, and this weapon delivers exactly that. Up next, we have the newest attack class weapon, Inuzuka Clan Food Pills and Ninja Hound, or simply Akamaru. This weapon lets you fight like Kippa, and I'll be honest, I might have this ranked a little high, but it's hard not to when it offers almost everything you'd want as an attack type. Both versions of the strong attack are excellent range options that deal solid damage while also knocking enemies into the air, letting you easily continue your offense. The combos overall are fantastic as well, especially the light attack combo, which is long, deals great damage, and ends with a knock-up for even more follow-up potential. And of course, being able to fight like Kiba and use Fang over Fang is just inherently cool, which might bias me a bit. That said, even setting that aside, this weapon is genuinely strong across the board and absolutely deserves its spot near the top. At the penultimate spot, we have another SS Plus weapon, Demon Roar, which allows you to enter a bloodthirsty mode at the cost of roughly 15% of your health. In exchange, you gain increased attack speed, movement speed, higher attack power, and lifesteal on top of that. Some players might dislike having to sacrifice a part of their health, but in my opinion, it's more than worth it. Being able to close the distance faster and deal more damage while actively stealing life from your opponent is incredibly powerful. On top of that, the weapon has some very long combos that are extremely easy to execute. The main downside is that because these combos last so long, you're more likely to get interrupted while performing them. That said, when they do connect, they can completely remove an annoying component from the fight for a solid amount of time. Overall, this is an amazing weapon that lets you repeatedly tap into a very strong power-up throughout the match. And at the number 1 spot on this list, we have the most recent SS Plus attack class weapon, Minato Slash Blade Yellow Flash. To be completely honest, if this ranking were purely objective and based only on what weapon is strongest in the absolute best hands, something like the Kawaki weapon or Demon Roar might take the top spot instead. But for me personally, Minato's weapon is just the coolest one in the game. Its strong attack is incredible, allowing you to literally teleport around the map in short bursts. No other weapon really comes close to offering this level of mobility. On top of that, it has some of the cleanest and nicest looking combos in the entire game, and they're incredibly satisfying to use. So while it may not be the most meta-defining weapon on paper, for me this is easily the best attack class weapon in Shinobi Striker. And yeah, that's the list. Kinda goes without saying, but keep in mind that this is just my list of how I see the weapons. Obviously, I don't have the same amount of time with each of these weapons, so it's not the most objectively correct list out there. Plus, everyone has different playstyles. Some people might just enjoy using the weapons casually, and some might try to take advantage of all of the different combo cancels and other stuff out there. I mostly stand in the first category, and I think a lot of you guys probably do too. Either way, let me know in the comments what you thought of this ranking and if you wanna see the same for the rest of the classes. I'll see you all soon. Bye!